in the lab for the computers, but we cannot rely on them like 100%, right? Because sometimes maybe if a breaker goes off, so then there's no use of the UPS, right? So there are, or let's say the computer gets stuck for some reason, right? So the things like this happen, right? So we always ask students to save their files frequently, but some they do that, but some they don't, and so they realize the seriousness of it after something happens, like the computer gets stuck, or I don't know, for breaker goes off, and then whatever they have done is all lost, right? Okay, so be very careful when using the RM and the wildcards, the star, right? Especially because if you like make a typing mistake, uh, then if you execute the command without checking properly, right? So that might happen, when you get used to this. Okay, you think, okay, you know this, and you just type and enter. Then, if you type an incorrect command, then that's it, right? There is no reverse, undo. So you have to be very careful when using the wildcards, right? Okay, so service. Yeah, so these are the options which are available. Yeah, so you can view the status, or then you have the help. Yeah, so here it says all scripts should support at least the start and stop command. So special cases, a full restart. So service. Right, so it shows the yeah, so it's explained here. Service status or runs or init scripts in alphabetical order with the status command. With the status command, yes. The status is plus for running services, minus for stop services. Right. So you saw some there were plus and some there were minus. So minus are stop services, and question mark will be shown for services without a status command. Right. So when you type status all, it will give status to all the running commands available, right? Then, so those commands will give output. So that is what is showed here, right? So all these commands, when you give status command to them, they will give output whether they are running or not, right? So the running ones here are with the plus sign, and currently not running processors are with the minus sign, right? Okay, I hope that is clear. So let's go to our next slide. So creating users groups. Okay, give me a minute. Okay, so let's start with users, creating users and groups in Linux. Okay, so managing users and groups, then managing ownership, permissions, and quotas. What is quotas? Does anyone know?
No, sir.
Okay.
Others,
Sorry?
others can you know?
What do you mean? No, 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 not others, not others. Right. Okay. So these quotas, or we call them disk quotas. You know what a quota is, right? Like, so we separate some kind of quota, right? So this is actually talking about disk quota, right? We call it disk quota. Let's say now, okay. So in the university, every year there are close to 1,000 like graduates coming, right? New people coming after their A levels, right? So um, so I'm working in the computer science department. So they are coming into the department, everyone, right? So I have to every year I have to create like close to 1,000 accounts, right? Because all of the students will be coming to the department, and then after the first semester they will be divided to the separate departments and so on, right? Like chemical, computer science, electrical, like that. So uh, so I have to create so close to 1,000 users now. So they are given an account in the server, right? And then now I have to give them space for them to save their files, right? Now I have to make sure, now I have limited amount of space, this space, right, for every user. And I have to make sure that the students, they don't misuse the this space, right? So what I do is I allocate these quotas. So to everyone, let's say usually, so according to the requirement, now usually for programming, and it's just some files, right? Source code, files, small files. So actually a small amount of data is enough, like 15 megabyte, 30 megabyte. That sort of is actually more than enough, right? Because mainly they are saving text files and so on. So I separate for each user that amount from the hard disk, right? So that will make sure that if that they if I don't separate the disk space, what will happen is they all will have so okay. So there, if there's no permission or disk quota set, what will happen is anyone can misuse, right? They might store some large files in their folders. So if they do that, what will happen is, if the disk gets filled up, right? If disk gets full, it will affect all the users, right? Because everyone, the space is shared by everyone, right? Because everyone is using the same hard disk. So if one or two users, if they copy some large amount of data to their folders, then that will affect all the users, because if the disk gets full, then no one will be able to use the disk to save their work, right? So to make sure that that doesn't happen, so I allocate some amount of disk space, so they cannot copy or store anything beyond that, right? So if they full up their disk quota, then they won't be able to keep any of the or save any of their files. So only that user will it will affect only that user, right? It will not affect the other users. So that is the purpose of this disk quota. So that should be done when when you are giving access to lot of users. If it is a small number of users, can manage without this, right? Because you can now, let's say, uh, okay, if I don't put quotas, let's say the disk gets full. Now the problem is, how do I find who has put a large file? That will be a bit difficult to find, because if there are few number of users, I can go folder by folder. Let's say 20 users, right? So I can go each folder and look at the properties and check the size, and then okay, then I can know, okay, oh, this person has saved a large file and so on. Like if I have close to 1,000 users, I cannot do that, right? So the best way is to use these quotas to make sure that there's a restriction on uh, the amount of data they can store in their storage or document folder, right? So that is the purpose of having these disk quotas, right? So in Windows, if you get this professional version, it's not there in the home version, I think. In the professional version, it is there. Let's see if I can show you that. Okay, now this is the properties of the C drive, right? Here there's a quota tab. Yeah, so see the description. This hard disk supports space limits for each user. So a single user cannot fill the entire disk. See, so that is the purpose, right? So when I put a disk quota to all the users, then one user cannot, misuse it and fill the entire disk, right? So it says show quota settings. Yeah, so let me share you the other. Mm, okay, can you see the quota settings? Okay, right. So here you see a traffic light saying disk quotas are disabled. So currently it's not, disk quotas are not enabled here, right? So if I click enable, um, right. So here I can decide if I want to limit the disk space or not, right? Then I can, there's an option saying deny disk space to users exceeding quota limit. That means, let's say I give, let's say for example, I give 5 GB for one user, right? If they exceed that, let's say 6 GB or 7 GB, they have currently put in their drive, right? So if I use this option to deny, so the moment they exceed it, so they will get error saying they have exceeded, right? They will not be able to copy any more files, right? So they have to reduce uh, less than what they have given. That is, now if they have been given 5 GB limit, this quota, if they have like maybe copied a large file and now it has gone to like 7 GB. So they have to reduce it to less than 5 GB to be able to be usable, right? Otherwise, they will not be able to use uh, their space to save data, right? And then here, yeah, I can give limit, right? Here I can limit the space. I can give the value whatever megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, and exabyte is also there, right? So we don't have that kind of hard disk yet, but I think in near future we will get, because now we have gone to the terabyte, right? Uh, right. Okay. Then here I can set a warning level. Like for example, okay, let's say I'm putting 5 GB limit, right? Then warning I can give a less amount, like maybe 4, right? So then it will give a warning when the when they put files and this 4 GB limit is reached, they will get a warning saying it's closing to the limitation, right? To reduce the number of files. I can give this a less amount, a bit less also, right? So they will get an early warning that they can remove unwanted files, right? And then there are options to log event when a user exceeds the quota limit. So if a user exceeds this value, let's say he puts a big file and it's gone to 7 GB or something, then in the log file, event log, right? That event is logged. That means if I check the event logs, then I know, okay, this user has exceeded this limit. So I get to know that, right? Then I can put warning for the people who are exceeding their warning level, right? Then the log event will go and write there. So later on, I can check the logs and I can find who has done those things, right? And then yeah, there's an option to view these quota entries. Okay, so here, if they have exceeded their warning level or quota limit, usually if I have applied the disk quota, it will be shown here. Now currently I have not applied to any user, so nothing is shown here. If I have applied, so everything will be shown here, right? For per user, what is the amount they have used, what is the quota limit I have set for them, what is the warning level, currently how much is used, right? So those values I will be able to view and manage after that. So in Linux also there are tools to apply this quota, right? So this actually should be done if there are a lot of users, right? Otherwise, it's very difficult to manage, right? Because if a user, one or two users, if they put big files, and it will, as I said, it will affect all users, right? And sometimes they don't even have to put big files when they are running these programs or coding, right? C or Python or whatever, right? Sometimes when you're typing the code, so they make mistakes, and especially these for loops and so on, right? If they don't properly type them, the for loop or whatever kind of loop, it's supposed to end, right? But sometimes that doesn't happen. Right, when you now if you have done programming, what are these for loops and while loops. So there are loops, where you can repeat the same coding uh, limited number of times, right? Usually a loop, we don't put a loop usually as infinite, right? Usually we put some condition or number of times only it will repeat and then it will break, right? So sometimes when students are doing it, they make mistakes, and these loops they go infinite, right? And then sometimes files are created in their drives, and um, this actually happens, right? Because I have experience the students, some do this, and their disk gets filled up, right? Due to the infinite loop, a lot of files, or maybe the size of the file, it will increase, and it will run up to their disk space. Now if these quotas are not there, then that size will run up to the whole disk size. That has actually happened, right? Because I have experience. uh, so when that happens, then I have to go and find out uh, which user has used up the space and all that. So when you're using these quotas, you can prevent this. Like then only it will affect to that user, right? When the disk quota is reached, we can limit this space to that user, so that for that user only cannot use the disk. The other people, no issue, right? So even if they are not copying big files, due to things like this happens. Okay, so that is about these quotas. So if you're allowing some kind of server space or disk space to students, for example, right, or users, it's better to have a disk quota. Otherwise, one person or few persons can fill up the whole disk, and it will be unusable for everyone, right? So that's not fair. Right. So managing ownership, permissions, and quotas. Right. Then Linux user accounts and groups. Yeah, how they work, where they are stored. So we will look into those. Creating and managing user accounts from the command line. So there are some commands we have to type. Right. So a user account, as you know, has a username and password, right? So that you should know. Now even I think you all should have a username and password to log into your Windows, right? Okay. By default, all user home directories are created and maintained in the home directory. So in Windows, this is the C users folder, right? C/users, then you get your username, the folder with the username. Then inside that you have all your whatever folders, right? And usually uh, the normal user permission accounts, that is um, the accounts with the lower amount of permission, that means normal user, right, can access only their folder, right? They cannot access another person's folder because permissions are there, so that the owner of the folder, the only person who can access. So actually, if you are trying to open another person's folder, even if you are administrator account, right, by default you cannot access another person's folder, right? uh, because permissions are default made that way, right, for privacy. But an administrator has the power to take ownership of another person's folder, right? Because there may be reasons where you need to see what are the files or whatever the user is keeping in their folders. right? So you need to, as admin, you need to be able to take ownership and look at the files. So admin, by default, if you try to open another one user's folder, it will say cannot open, and it will ask if you want to take ownership, right? So then if you click yes, then it will change the ownership to the administrator, and then of course you can access that user's folder. Otherwise you cannot access, and normal users definitely they cannot access another person's folder, and they cannot take ownership, right? Only the admin, only a administrator account can access another person's or take ownership of another person's folder. Okay, so let's have a break now in C drive. Okay, so in Linux, it's the home directory in the root, right? So it contains all the usernames available. So usually, if you are creating, for students in the university, let's say, so we are usually using their index numbers, right? So that it's easy to manage, right? Names, it's a bit difficult. Some may have the same name and so on, right? So using the index number is the easiest one when we are dealing with accounts. Right. Okay. So yeah. Okay. The root user's home directory is /root. So the root, that is the super administrator, right? The account, the root account is the super admin, which has the highest permission available, right? So it's actually it's not in the home folder. It's in a different folder called root, right? So yeah, don't. So it's a bit confusing because yeah. So the root folder. So this is our. So this is the root folder, right? This is the starting point for Linux. Or in Windows, we can call it, let's say, the C drive, the root of the C drive, right? So this is in Linux. Linux, the root folder is the starting point. And if you take Windows, let's say C drive, so C colon slash. So this is the starting point of the, let's say, Windows or system folder, right, or directory. Also in Linux, as you know, there are no drive letters, right? Like CD in Windows, there are no drive letters in Linux. All are starting with this root or the slash sign, right? So this slash we call the root or the root folder, and then this root folder is different. This is the actually the home folder for root user, right? So don't confuse between these two, right? So slash, that is also called the root, and the second one we can yeah. So the first slash means root or the the topmost folder in the hierarchy, right? So then you have some subfolders and files from the root, right? So the full path when you type in Linux, it starts with the root. So any path, any full path that you type starts with this, right? Then you get the other. So let's say if you are typing a path of your home folder, right? Let's say your username is user. So /home/user, right? So slash, the first is the one what you call root or root folder, In the root folder, you have the home folder, and in the home folder, you have the users folder, right? So home and user are subfolders of root, and the user is a subfolder of the home folder, right? So this root, now every user has a folder inside the home folder, but the root user or the super administrator has a different folder, uh, which is root. Okay, I will show this in the VM. Let me clear this. So, okay, if I type ls, yeah, to show the root folder, yeah, I will put -l. It will be a bit clear, right? Yeah, now can you see there is a folder called root here, right? And there's also a folder called home. So home contains all the users folder except the root, right? So the roots folder is being kept separate. So there is, yeah, so definitely that is for security purpose, right? So that whatever you're running or whatever the files in the root or home folder, root's home folder is separate from the others, right? So that no one can try to access that folder, right? So no one can even mistakenly give access because it's separate. It's not in the home folder. So if you like try to change permissions in the home folder, it will not affect the root's root home folder, right? Because it is separate. Now look at the permissions. Can you see in the root folder? See only the owner has read write execute permission, right? So owner is the root, right? So if I try to list what is, you see I get the permission denied, right? Now if I am root user only, I can view the what is inside the root home folder, right? Okay, so is that clear? So all the users have their home directories in the home folder, which is in the root, right? So currently I have only one user account here, OS boxes. So yeah, so better use this -l in the ls, so it will be clear, right? Okay. So the OS boxes, if you take that folder, the owner only does not have access, right? You have group and other user access is there also. Cannot write. The other users cannot write, but they can read and execute. Right? Permission is given there. So if I want, I can remove that other permission so that others cannot access my home folder. Right. So let's go back to the slide. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Right. So yeah, every user has a home directory, and default shell will be there to each user. And each user account is also assigned a unique ID. Right. So there is a unique ID number which is assigned or generated when you create a new user, right? So if two yeah, you cannot I think have the same user account, sorry, username to two users, right? So anyway, so there is a unique user ID created whenever you create an account, right? So yeah, that ID will be unique, right? So it will not be the same between, let's say, two users. Right. So no two user accounts on the system will have the same user ID. Yes. So with the user ID for a given user account, you can use the ID space username command from the share prompt. So information about okay, this someone user account. Okay, so let's try this. So I give this and my username. Okay, so you can see, right? Yeah, so my user ID is 1000. So I think the usually the first created user I think gets 1000, and then yeah, this number increases I think when you create new users. Okay, let's try those as well. GID is group ID. So if I don't give a name for the group, it will default create a separate group from the username itself, right? So if you check the above, the listing of the root folder, right? So what it shows here is the permission, right? For each folder and file, the root user has permission, and the group is also root. So default, it has created a group called root with the same username and given group permission to that group, right? So if a user is part of the group root, then they can have access to all these folders which are there. And let's say now my home folder has group permission for OS boxes group. So if I add any other users to the OS boxes group, then they will have whatever the group permission given in the folder, right? Otherwise, we can create separate group, a separate group, right? Let's say, for example, if I'm creating student accounts, then I can give a separate group for them as student, right? So the student group will contain all the students, and whatever permission to you give to the student group will apply to all the users which are in the group, right? So groups you create so that you can give bulk permission to a set of users, right? Directly, rather than giving individual permission to each user. So if you have a lot of users, let's say more than 100, right? Or let's say more than 50, right? So having a group is very easy. You can give permissions easily, right? Yeah, so there are some other IDs as well. It's showing ADM, CD-ROM, sudo. Um, yeah, so my user is actually a sudo user. So being a sudo user means I can type administrator commands also by using the sudo command, right? So not every user cannot use the sudo command. Only there's a separate group called sudo. So the people we add to the sudo group, they can run admin commands, but the others cannot, right? So when we give sudo permission to a user, we have to make sure that they are responsible people, right? Otherwise, if they type some incorrect command as sudo, well, it might damage whatever the configuration or whatever the server, right, or application or whatever. So we only give limited people the sudo access, right? And they should be responsible that whatever they do using the sudo, they are held responsible for that, accountable, right? Okay, so in Suse Linux, yeah, there's a variant called Suse Linux, right? You must have heard, some of you. Linux, the GUI, mostly the GUI is different, right? The graphical interface, mostly that will be the difference. Otherwise, usually the commands and all those things are basic Linux commands, right? Sometimes there may be additional commands in these variant operating systems, but they are all based on Linux. So usually they should have, the same what we did, the basic commands like changing directory, creating directory, remove directory, those common or basic commands will be there and everything. The graphical interface will be different, what you can do and so on, right? But basically, the setting the permission, security, usually all should be the same in these Linux variants, right? Okay, in Suse Linux, the first regular user account created on the system is always assigned the UID of 100. Yeah, so in this Ubuntu version also, the first one is given UID 1000. Right, the next one will be assigned 1001. Yeah, I think Linux, this Ubuntu also, it will be the same. Okay, other distributions may use different numbering for UID. However, UIDs on Fedora system start in 500. Okay, so Fedora, that's another Linux variant. So in that, it seems the UID will start with 500, right, instead of 1000. So it can be different in different kinds of Linux versions. Okay, the root user account is always assigned UID of 0. Yeah, in most Linux distributions, so usually the root account is given 0 UID, right? That's the very first time. That's the super user, right? The topmost. There is no one above that. Root is the super user, so or super administrator, you can say, right? Even in Windows, you have a super administrator. That is the default administrator account, which is created by default when you install, right? So any new user you create and give administrator permission, those are not super users, right? Those are administrators. So super user is the one who is on the top, just the most permission. The super user or root in case of Linux, or administrator account in case of Windows, they have full power over the OS, right? Like some things which are limited in the normal administrator accounts, you can do it in super user or super administrator, we can say, right? Okay, so it's a UID that operating system actually uses to control access to files and data in the file system, right? So when we put permission, like, okay, this is the owner of the file or folder. That is, if you put permission as root is the owner of this file or folder. So when we list, what we see is the username, right? But the operating system actually uses the user ID to apply that permissions, right? Not the name. So name is there for us to easily understand, but the operating system uses the user ID actually, right? But it doesn't show us the user ID because it's difficult for us to understand the or look by the user ID, right? So they are showing us the username. Okay, so where are these accounts stored? So yeah, okay, Linux is very flexible. Yeah, so one of the flexible features is location of the user accounts in the system. That is when you originally install. So your distribution may have given you several options where you wanted to store your user accounts. So when you install, it may ask you to select where you want to store the user accounts and so on. So this screen allows you to choose from the following authentication methods. Right, yeah. So there are these three types of authentication methods available. right? You can use local, LDAP, or NIS. Local authentication means the accounts and everything will be stored in your computer or laptop locally, right? Locally. That is what is called local. If you are using LDAP, then that means you have to have a LDAP server, right? So LDAP is like Windows Active Directory. So LDAP means Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. It's much more simple than the Active Directory, and it doesn't have that kind of security like Active Directory, right? So in LDAP, it's very simple. So it can be uh, it can be used in the very basic systems also. So what I mean by very basic systems is devices, basic devices, network devices also, LDAP, it can be supported. But if you take Active Directory, right, that's very complex with security, encryption, everything. So that cannot be compatible or supported with basic kinds of devices, right? Because it's difficult to the protocols and everything. It's difficult to put in those limited kind of devices, right? You have it has to be high end kind of devices where you can put or integrate with the Active Directory, right? But with LDAP, basic network devices, it can be integrated because it's a very simple protocol, so simple protocols, no issue. It doesn't have to have that much processing, right? So it can be implemented. So then, if you're using LDAP, then your username and password will be stored in the LDAP server, right? So when you log in, you will be accessing the LDAP server to authenticate your username and password, right? If it is local, that means it's in your computer or laptop, username and password. You don't have to have network. Even if you remove the network, you can log into your computer or laptop in Linux, right? LDAP, you need to have network connection because you're communicating with the LDAP server to log in. Then you have NIS, name information server. That is also type of like Active Directory type of thing, right? It's I think a bit advanced than LDAP, but not as complex as Active Directory, right? Because it's a very basic thing. This NIS, it was there for a long time now. Not much has changed or updated in this NIS. Not much of security is also there. So if you are using NIS, there's not much of security there, right? Like the username passwords, when they are communicated, encryption and those sort of things are not implemented in that. So it's not very secure. So someone can capture your username or password uh, when you are using it, right? Because NIS also is a server. So from your computer, when you type username and password, it will be checked with the NIS server, right? Because your username is password is stored in the NIS server. So you have to send your username and password through the network to the NIS server, and that is where if someone can access that data, then there is a problem, right? So both are like basic types of uh, protocols, right? LDAP and NIS. Active Directory is a lot more complex. It has security, encryption, right? When you type your username and password in Windows in a uh, domain, right? Domain computer or client. So it will go to the domain server or Active Directory, right? To check authenticate whether the username password is correct. So that also is sent in an encrypted manner so that even if someone catches those, it cannot be read. The username and password cannot be seen, right? But these are not using that kind of encryption methods, right? So these are very basic ones. Uh, yeah, probably if you are using it in a LAN, it's okay. But if you are using in the internet, then that is an issue, right? Because the username and password can be found out by someone in the internet. So there are various ways to use if you are using the internet, like if you have a VPN connection or something, right? Then we can have some kind of security for these kind of systems, right? Otherwise, we should not directly connect these to the internet. Okay, some description. So local stores the user accounts in the etc/password file. So this pass wd file is in the etc folder, which is in the root, right? So this is the default configuration used by Linux system for many years. So this passwd file contains the passwords. So let's have a look. Okay, so the etc folder contains a lot of things. Right. So if you want to list the files or folders starting with P, you can do like this. Just type P and then press tab key like 2 times, and you will otherwise you will get the whole folder, right? So pass WD is there. So shall we see what is inside? I can just view like this. Okay, so I'm not in the etc folder, so I have to type the full path, right? Okay. So these are the actually usernames which are available. In the system, right? Okay, so yeah, you can see there are a lot of like user accounts here which are not actually usable for us, but it's used by the system, right? The operating system. These usernames which are there. Yeah, you can see my user account, the one before the last OS boxes. So you see the user ID and group ID there, 1000. Then yeah, I think that's the password. You see the home folder, then the shell. So my shell is bash shell. You can see there in that line, right? Bin bash. So my shell is bin bash, right? Which is located in the bin folder. So yeah. So this is the passwd file. So you can manually edit this also, right? When you create user accounts, it will be updated here. So we will do that, and we will see that. Okay, LDAP is a new option. We starting to adapt instead of storing user accounts in a file system. User accounts are stored the data by Open LDAP. Yeah, so it's open source, not like Active Directory, which is Windows, right? So it's not open, right? So Windows, the Active Directory is a Windows technology, so it's not open source. They have not given the source to public, right? Open the source. So this is open source. That means anyone can get the source code and customize or do whatever they want since it's open. You cannot sell it commercially, right? Because it's open. Right. Unlike local authentication, which is a flat file, the related service is hierarchical in nature. Right. So local authentication is just a file. There is no hierarchy, right? It's flat. The local authentication is we consider it as a flat. It doesn't have a hierarchy, right? So the directory service is hierarchical in nature, allowing you to sort and organize the user accounts by location. Yeah. So in LDAP, it's hierarchical means you can group. You can put to separate groups in a hierarchy, right? So it's like this. In a hierarchy means, let's say if you want to create staff accounts or something, right? So you can, create staff. Then you can create maybe like this. We can maybe group like this. So this is a hierarchy, right? Yeah, you have the top, and then to the bottom you branch out, right? And here maybe we can separate into you know maybe departments, right? Finance, so like that. HR, sales. So separately can, so there can be hierarchy in LDAP, right? But in the local file, as I showed you, there's nothing like that. Just flat. Flat means so it's only one level. Like if you consider the staff, so everyone will be in the same level. There cannot be levels like this. Okay, allowing you to sort or organize the sequence by location. Yeah, you can. Yeah, location means you can by department or maybe let's say branches. If you take a company, some private company, right? Maybe it has branches. Then you can if you are having accounts centrally managed centrally in the head office, right? Then you are using the same system in the branches, right? Then you can have the accounts by location. Let's say Patra one thing, and then maybe Megamo, Hotnaika, wherever another set of user accounts, and so on. Function and department. That is what I said earlier. So NIS, so that stands for Network Information Service. So this is also a type of a server, like Active Directory, where you have the user accounts in a server, and then you connect a client. Like you have the NIS server, then you have the NIS client. So same like domain server architecture, right? So every account you can keep centrally. So this is designed to provide centralized user account management when you have multiple systems that all need the same user account. So this is like the domain environment, right? Where you have the domain server and the domain clients will be the lab computers, right? So let's say you are given a login with your index number, you can log into any of the domain clients with the same username and password, right? Which will be your own, which will be given to you. Right, to do this, NIS configure systems to all use a common password and shadow file. Yeah, so in the NIS server, it also contains a passwd and there's also shadow file. So these two files contain all the whatever user details which should be there, right? Okay, let me show you the shadow file also. Okay, sorry, it's should be starting from S. Okay, the shadow file is there. So cat. Okay. Right, now can you see this shadow file is owned by the root, right? And then added to the group shadow, right? So if you check the permission, the root has only read write access, no execute. And then the group access given to shadow is read only, right? So the root can actually write to this file. No one else can access this file. Other access is not there, right? That is because this contains the passwords and all. So it has been made so that users cannot access this file. But let's see if I can use the sudo command to access. Okay, so I have to type the password. Right. So I can access that because I have sudo access. So normally, so I am a normal user. So actually, yeah, I'm a sudo user. My user account. So I have normal user privileges, but also if I want to do some admin stuff which require admin permission, I can do it using the sudo command, right? So anything which requires admin permission, I can use the sudo and I can do those things, right? But if I don't have sudo permission, or I'm not in the sudo group, right, or I'm not a sudo user, then actually I cannot run this admin type of commands. Right, now if you check my name or username OS boxes, you can see that there is a large some random some letters and symbols that is actually my encrypted password, right? So as you can see, even if someone accesses this file, the password is encrypted. You cannot directly uh, see the password, right? It's encrypted actually. So yeah, even if you change it here, then it will be of no use, right? Because this is the encrypted value of my password. So usually the technologies, when you hash and put it here, you cannot reverse it, right? So usually I think uh, MD5 or some technique is used so that uh, when you hash your password or encrypt your password using that protocol, it cannot be reversed, right? When you reverse this, you cannot get the original one. That is how it's usually done. The only way to find this is, to hack the password is actually you can guess some passwords and then encrypt with the hash and see if the hash is the same. If you get the same hash, then that's the password, right? So that is the only way you can find out what password I have put. Otherwise, if you forget your password, you cannot actually see it from here, right? You will have to reset it. Cannot see the password because it's encrypted. Okay. Usually, the reason why this is, restricted access is because, if you change something here, if I change, that password which is there, even a letter or two, then I won't be able to log in using my password, right? Because then it will not work. So you have to be very careful when you're dealing with these files, right? Then you have the Windows domain, where you have a domain server with the Active Directory, with all the username and password, and then you have the domain clients where you can log in. Right. So if you have Windows domain control in a network or another Linux server running the Samba service, right, you can configure Linux system to use the user accounts in the domain to authenticate to the local system. Yeah, so actually you cannot directly connect to the Windows domain, right? So there should be, here it's saying Linux server running the Samba service. So to the Samba service, you can connect like shares and so on, right? But the Active Directory you cannot directly connect to Linux environment, right? It's different, and since this Active Directory is not open, so people don't know actually how it works and so on, right? Because the source is not open, right? So there may be tools which you can use to integrate it with Linux, but directly you cannot connect a Windows domain to Linux, right? The Active Directory you cannot directly connect to Linux. That is not compatible because Microsoft, they have one kind of technology, and so this Linux has another kind of technology, right? Yeah, so even if you are integrating, it should be in some kind of basic kind of way, right? Not a secure way. If you are connecting to the because the Active Directory, all the full features, it cannot be used in Linux because my Windows and Linux are different, right? So it's all the features cannot be anyway accessed by Linux, even if you are doing this kind of thing, right? And sometimes security might be not as like in Windows, right? If you are connecting like this, If you are connecting Windows to a Windows client, definitely all the security and everything is there, right? Okay, so here are the files. You have the etc passwd file, which contains the user account information for your system. Like I showed you earlier, the home folder and things like that. Then the shadow file contains passwords. That also I showed you. Group file contains the groups which are created in the system. I will show again. This is the passwd file. So you can see in that it contains the username, user ID, group ID, then home folder, right? And then the bash or the shell. What is the shell being used, right? So those settings are here in this. And then if we check the shadow file, right? It contains the password basically, right? Username and password. It contains the password. Yeah, and some other IDs also is there, but basically this has the password, stores the password. So now if I change the password, this value will change, right?
shadow එකේ මේ password file එකේ වෙනස මොකක්ද sir? සාරුලා
මේ shadow file එක තමයි.
මේ password file එකේ තියෙන ඒකට information.
ඔව් password file එකේ තියෙන information. මේ තියෙන්නේ මේක තමයි password file එක. ඔය තියෙන්නේ. Username, user ID, home folder, path and the bash shell. That is all it has. It doesn't have the password.
ඒ කියන්නේ මේ මෙතන ඒ කියන්නේ අපේ user ගේ access control වගේ ඒවා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ
user
no login කියලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒකට ඒ අදාළ file එක log වෙන්න බෑ වගේ ඒ වගේ
අනිත් ඒවා ඔක්කොම user accounts මේ තියෙන්නේ. මේවා අපිට අදාළ ඒවා නෙමෙයි. ඒවා මුකුත් change කරන්න හොඳ නැහැ. ඒවා operating system එකට use කරන ඒවා තියෙන්නේ මේක අනිත් ඒවා ටික. මෙතන පල්ලෙහාට තමයි හැදෙන්නේ අපේ ඒවා ටික. Basically බලන්න IDs, right? So 1000 we have this first account. If I create another user account, then it will be 1001 and it goes like that. So below 1000 it will be usually system accounts. You should not change any of those. If you change, then they might not work, right? The others are all required for system applications and so on. So we don't need to be concerned about them. So only the ones starting after 1000 are our user accounts, right? That we create. So the very first one is this one, which has the 1000 user ID, right? We will create accounts and see what we get as the next user ID. So this is the passwd file, which contains basically just some information about the users. And then we have the shadow file, which I need admin access or sudo access to open and see, right? Otherwise I cannot access. Yeah, so the password here you can see it's encrypted. You cannot see, when the admin cannot see the password of a user, right? And if anyone tries to access this file, you cannot see the password, right? It's encrypted. You should not change anything in this file, because if you this password, if you type something or delete some character, what if you change it, then it will not work, right? Because then this hash will change and you will not be able to log in, right? Then you have to do a recovery, because this is the admin account, and so if you cannot log in from the admin account, then you have a problem, right? You cannot do anything. So then, and you cannot use the normal user account also to access this file, right? Then you have to go for a operating system recovery, right? And then maybe there you can reset the password. So you should not meddle with this file. You should be careful if you are editing this file, right? Then let's see the group file. Right. So it contains the various groups which are available or created currently. Now, I have a group created with my own username called OS Boxes, and the group ID is also shown here. So they have used the first group ID as 1000 also, right? So if I create some new group, then another, I think it will be 1001, the group ID, right? So those are the basically three files which are there in Linux, right? So passwd contains user account information. Shadow contains the password. Then the group contains the groups which are created in the system. So this is used by the local system, right? Now, if you are going to this NIS server also, in the server, you will have, these types of files also, but they will be used by all the clients to access, right, commonly. So like a central. So NIS, if you have NIS server and you have username and passwords in that, so it will be mostly these same files. So these files will be accessed by all the NIS clients when they log in, right? So the local whatever files which will be there in the clients, they are used for local login, right? And the NIS login is used for domain login purpose, right? So whatever username and password will be there in the NIS. So usually you should not have the okay, there's a local. These files are there. Let's say okay, I will draw this. Okay, I will draw the server as a bigger one, right? So in my server, it's like the domain server, right? Right. Now let's say we have put up a NIS server and then we have added this client to the NIS server, right? Now if we take this file, these files, password shadow group, so these set of files are there in both these, right? So you have all these three files in the client as well as the server. I'm just drawing 3 lines to show the 3 files, right? So the password contains the username and home directory and so on, right? Passwd. Shadow contains the password of the username, and then group contains the group. Okay, let's consider the password and shadow files only, right? The group is not actually needed at this moment. To log in, basically you need the password and shadow, right? Pass WD and shadow. Right. Now, when you are logging into this client computer, if you type username and password, which is in this file, in the local computer, right? The password WD and shadow of this local computer. If you type username and password, which belongs to the local computer, then it will do a local login, right? And then whatever settings and files will be only local. Whatever you do will be saved in this computer only. Okay, I will draw another computer. This is another NIS client. So, okay. This also has these two files, right? Okay, so etc is pass WD and etc shadow. So there is a local version in every client machine, right? Which are dealing with local accounts only. Okay, there should be a connection. Right. So if you type in a username and password which is in this NIS client only locally, right? Then you will log in locally to this computer, and whatever you save will be in this computer client only, right? So if you go and log in into another computer with the username and password in the local client, so whatever saved will be in here only, right? Cannot be accessed from anywhere. Now, if you log into this client using a username and password which is in the NIS server, right? Then whatever you will save, right, will be sent to the server. So in the server you have a folder with your username. So then if you log in using the same username and password which is in the server in another computer, right, you get the same files to your computer because it's centrally in the server, right? If you use local accounts to log in these client computers, right, the local files, then whatever you save or do will be in that computer only, right? So next time if you don't use the same computer, you cannot get those files or settings or whatever, right? So this is the same like the domain, Windows domain environment. So if you log into a local user account, then you will have a local environment, save everything in the local computer. If you go to another computer, you can't get those files, right? But if you are using a domain account, so you can save in the domain the files whatever, so that can be accessed by any computer in the domain. So the preferred method is this, using a server or centrally managed one, right? Because then you can every day you can go and log into any computer and you can use, right? Because you cannot guarantee that you will get the same computer every day if there are a lot of students, right? And let's say that for some reason one of these computers is not working, right? it's not booting up. Maybe there's a power issue or motherboard issue or whatever, right? So then the data, of course, you cannot get, right, because it's in that computer. So if you are using the server account or NIS account, right, then your data will be in the server. So if even if any computer gets damaged or not working, your files will be there in the server, right? So unless the server goes down for some reason, then you won't have your files. But usually there's backup for the server, so you don't have to worry about that. Right. So is this clear? So NIS is the same as the domain in Windows, right? Domain server and Active Directory, right? So this can be configured in this NIS can be configured in Linux or Ubuntu also, right? So you can install Ubuntu server or even desktop is no issue. You can install NIS server in that central computer, right? And then you have to configure the client in NIS client in the client machines. You have to do some configuration, right? Then you can access the NIS server and log in. Then centrally you can manage all the accounts. If you want to change the password, you go to the NIS server and change the password, right? Then so when the student logins, they can log in using that password to any computer, or you can disable an account. Let's say a student does something mischievous, right, in a computer. So then we need to block that user. So we disable the account, right? So then that student will not be able to log in until the administrator unlocks the account, right, or enables the account. So in Windows, there's also option to lock the. If you type the incorrect password like 3 or 5 times, it will lock your account, right? So then sometimes if the policy is there, it will automatically unlock in, let's say, 30 seconds or 30 minutes or half an hour. But if that is not there, then you have to go to the admin and then unlock your account, right? So it's the basic thing, like you're logging into some cloud system or bank system also, right? If you type incorrect password 3 times, even online banking, it will lock your account, right? Then some banks you can unlock yourself without contacting the bank, right? Like BOC, you can unlock by sending a code to your phone, right? Unlock yourself if it gets locked. But some banks you cannot unlock without contacting the bank, right? So same type here. Okay, I hope this is clear. Okay, this is what is contained in the etc passwd file, as I showed you. Okay, password is
අර ඇක්ටිව් ඩිරෙක්ටරි හරි ඩොමේන් එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එකකදී හරි ෆයිල් ඇක්සස් කරන්න මේ වෙනම ස්ටෝරේජ් එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ නේද? ඒ කියන්නේ
file server එකක්
plan හරි
තියෙනවා. file server එකක් තියෙනවා. domain server එකයි file server එකයි දෙකක්. domain server is one thing, file server is one thing. If you want, you can have the file server in the same domain server, or you can have a separate server, physical server as a file server. Both options are possible, but that is done by the file server. So you have to configure the file server if you want to share network drive to your domain account, right? So when you set up a Windows server, so I said there are roles that you can give to a server. So domain server is one role, file server is another role. If you want, you can give multiple roles to the same server, or you can give those roles to separate servers, right? So that we decide based on the requirement and the processing power we have and storage and so on, right? So actually a domain server doesn't need to it's just authentication. So even you can just use a normal computer for a domain server also, right? No issue. The RAM also, even it doesn't need that much RAM also. uh, but the newer Windows servers versions, I think they need the memory should be there, like 2016 server 2016 and those things, right? But the older versions, say 2008, right? Those don't need that much of a RAM, so you can just install in a normal computer also, because there's not much of a processing there. It's just authentication, right? But a file server, you need to have a lot of processing and storage, right? Because files copied here and there, so definitely you need some processing power and storage. But that also it depends on the number of users, and then if large files are being copied and so on, right? So network and everything should be good if you are having a file server, and if you are, let's say, if people are copying large files in the network, then your network also should be good. Like, it's better to have 1 gig if a lot of traffic is going on, and you have to have a good server for the file server, right? Storage, maybe you can use RAID to increase the performance speed, right? And have a backup kind of thing as a RAID, right? Maybe mirror or something, so that your data will be able to be recovered, right? Or you can have a backup server separate in case one server fails. So it will be there in the other backup server, right? But then having a backup file server means the files have to be copied to the other server, because the copy should be there, right? So that will use the network and server processing and so on, right? And it might become slow, but it's good to have a backup in case one server fails, right? I'm talking about file server, right? Here, okay, it says password, but etc passwd, it does not contain the password, right? It contains the username, user ID, group ID, then the name. This is the name we give when we create the account, right? Full name we can give. Then the home folder, the default shell. So this is what I showed you earlier. Mm, this is the group file. Okay, so you can see here username, user ID, group ID, then the home folder and the shell. So those are default shell, right? Okay, the username field simply identifies the username, yes. This is the username you have to type when you log in, right? Then the password, okay. It says it's a legacy field. Yeah, so that means in older systems, this passwd also contained the password, right? At one time, the user's password was stored in encrypted form in this field. Right. At what time means that's a long time ago, right? So that means earlier password also was kept here in encrypted form, right? Okay, so for security reasons, the password has been moved. Right. So you can see here, it's better to have the password, file separately, right? Because that needs a lot of security. As you can see, normal users cannot even look at the shadow file now, right? Only the admin can see it. Okay, so I think, but in if you are using NIS, I think you can, yeah, as I remember, you can type a command, not from the server, from the client, right? Now, let's say I am a student and I have logged in with my account. So I remember there is a command you can type to see the passwd file or shadow file, because of the server, right? Because that file is actually commonly available to all, so that authentication you can access the file, right? So that security is not much there in NIS. So I think you can view the files. Anyone can view those files. They cannot see the password because it's encrypted, but I think there is a way to see those values. But normally in the local file, as you can see, security is there, so you can't even view the shadow file, right? Okay, UID is the user ID for the user account. GID is the one for the group ID. Number of the users default group. Yeah. So GID means the group ID of the current users group, right? So with my user, the same group with the same name has been created and given the ID, right, by the system. So that is when I create a user. If I don't create a group for the user, then it will automatically, create a group with the same name. That is how it happens. Full name, you can put the full name of the user, then home directory, the path to the home directory, then the default shell. Yeah, so shadow file I showed you, it first contains the username, right? That is the same one from the etc passwd file, the username. Then it has the password, which is encrypted, right? Okay, then last modified this. Right, there's a last modified field also, which displays the number of days that the password was last changed. Okay, I don't know about that. It doesn't seem to be here. There are only numbers here. Um, okay, this might be in another Linux version, right? In Ubuntu, you don't have this. Okay, no, wait. We are talking about the past WD file. Okay. Uh, yeah. In the past WD file, there was a. Okay, we are not talking about the shadow file, right? Mm, okay, it does not have any last modified dates. Okay, let me check on this. I think maybe. Oh no, this is talking about the shadow file. Yeah, maybe if you configure the account with these values, then only maybe it will be there. But currently, I don't have to my account. Okay. So anyway, so in the shadow file, these fields are there. So it might be different in Linux versions. And if you are not using these values, they might not be there in the file, right? So minimum days, yeah, that's when the password will expire, right? Maximum days is, yeah, the days that must wait before the password should be changed. Then warning is to give a warning before 7 days or the given number of before the given number of days here as the setting, right? If you put 7, then before the password expires, 7 days before the password expires, you will be given a warning. This is there in Windows as well. So these values in the Active Directory, you can put this value. Then you will get a warning saying your password is expired. The default in Active Directory is I think 180 days for the password change requirement, right? So when it is near the 180 days from the start, right? We have used your account or changed your initial password, you will get a warning if the policy is there, so that you change your password before it expires. Now, if it goes more than 180 days, right, and you have not logged in, so the minute you logged in after 180 days, you will get a message saying your password has expired, and so you will be forced to change your password. The password change dialog will automatically come. This is there in these online banking systems also. If you have used them, or you can ask someone who has used online banking, um, there is a number of days which the password will expire, right? So after that, when you log in, it will say your password is expired, you have to change. Then you will get the password change dialog box, where you cannot go in without changing your password, right? So these are the values related to that. Yeah, so disable days, it displays a number of days to wait after password has expired to disable the account. Yeah, if you put this value after the password has expired, let's say we put 7 days. So 7 days after the password is expired, it will automatically disable the account, right? If you put this value. Expire, yeah, shows you the expire date of the account. So if you want, you can put a null value to make sure that the account never expires, right? In Windows also, these all these things are there. You can put to never expire a password, right? So that password will stay the same, and you don't get any prompt to change your password or that the password is expired. So because of security, these things are there. Like he said that you should frequently change your password. Maybe like uh, after 3 months or 6 months, like that. So that if for some reason someone gets hold of your password, right? So when you change it like every 3 months or 6 months or something, then that person will not be able to use that password after that, right? Because we have changed it. So due to the security, they are implementing those kind of policies. So especially in online banking, if someone gets hold of your password, then that person can log in and transfer money to his account, right? So having a password change or expiring your password, make sure that security is there. Okay, to verify these two files, you can use the this command. This will verify each line in the two files and make sure they are valid. Right. If there are any errors in the lines of these two files, right, to running this command will make sure to check every line and to make sure that the files are okay. Because if there is anything wrong with the file, if they get corrupted, then you have a problem, right? You won't be able to log in. Why? Because your authentication or username is password is checked from these files. So if you don't, now if there's something wrong with the files, then you won't be able to log in, right? Okay, let's check this command and see. Yeah, so I'm clearing time to time to so that it will be clear to you, all right? What is the command? EWCK. Okay, so it's an administrator command, right? Okay. Right. There does seem to be some problems with these accounts. They are not accounts which I created, but yeah, so I don't need to worry too much about these because they are system accounts. Right. This nobody account, I think it's there. We can give it access to public, like for someone to access the file or folder without using an account. This is usually these type of things are needed for this website and things like that. Now if you put up a website in the Linux server, right? Now people who are accessing from outside, right? They will not be using a username and account, right? They will just go to the web page and open like that. So usually the web folder uh, needs to be, I think, given access to this nobody account so that anyone without a user account can access the files and folders. Otherwise, will not be able to access the website from outside, right? Because now we can give permission only to the existing users in this Linux server, right? So if you take a website, right, the files and folders will be in the web server, like images, videos, whatever. Then the web pages, HTML. So for those, we cannot. There is no way to give access to people who don't have a user account. So I think this is there for that purpose. So if you don't properly set the permissions, people will not be able to access the website. They will, get us access denied, or some images will not display, or videos, or whatever, or HTML page will not come, right? So those permissions we have to properly set. Uh, Otherwise, uh, if it is a web server, people will not be able to access the web pages. In Windows also, I think there is a username called everyone or something, right? So if you give access to that, then that means any user will be able to access from outside. Doesn't need to have a user account in the system. So yeah, here the nobody, I think that account is used for that purpose. Okay. Right. If for some reason the etc parser, WD and the etc shadow files were out of sync, you could use the password kernel command share from to fix the files. Hmm. Okay. What this means is, um, yeah. So what this means is, now you saw that in the etc password we have the username and some information, right? Home folder and those things, and the password. Sorry, the shadow file also you have the username and the password, right? Now, let's say so these two entries should be there in both files. Let's say in one file, the entry relating to the username is not there, right? Maybe let's say in the shadow file, the username and password is not there. So it should be there, right? Because when creating a user account, both these files will be written, and the username should be there in both files. One line should be there. So for some reason, if it is not so, then this command can be used to fix that, right? So then if username is missing from the, let's say, shadow file, then this command will automatically add that username to the shadow file, right? So currently I don't think yeah, there were errors shown in the past. Okay. So those errors that I got, so by running this command, this will fix it. But anyway, those are not accounts I created, so I don't have to worry too much about those. So if it were showing, errors in the accounts I have created, then I need to fix it, right? So this will add any missing user accounts from it password to etc shadow. If there was anything missing in shadow, it will be taken from pass wd and added to shadow. Okay, so these are the commands that we should use to create the account. So shall we try this? Now user add this command is used to add a new user. Then passwd is used to change the password. User mod is used to modify the username, right? Then user delete, so you can see as the command says that is to remove the username, right? So this is how you use user add. User add, then you give the options, then you give the username. Right? If you just type user add command, then this command will be created with the default parameters contained in the following configuration files. Yeah, so there are two configuration files given here. So if you type this command to create the account, the settings, the default settings or parameters or configuration which are specified in these two folders here will be applied to the new user. Okay, this file contains values that can be used for the GID and UID parameters and creation account user. Contains default for creating passwords in the etc shadow. Right. So these two files contain some values to use uh, when you create account. What should be taken as the GID or UID, right? Or what should be put for the passwords default, right? In shadow. So those values are actually given or stored in these two files. Let's open them and see. So one is etc default user add. So let me clear this. Cat etc default. Okay. Now these files are also actually, it's very dangerous to change these files. So if you are, I'm just viewing this file using the cat command. So I will not be able to mistakenly change this, right? I'm just viewing the file. Yeah, now it displayed the whole thing. So I cannot go to the top. So I can type like this. Right, so it will pause now. Right. So default values for user add. So the shell will be default bin sh, right? The default group for users, 100 users on Debian systems. Right, minus and try before behavior in NIGNS as well is to create a primary user group with the same name. Right. So you see the default behavior when minus n and minus g are not specified is to create a primary user group with the same name as the user. So if I create a user called Kamal, then default it will create a group called Kamal and add it to the group. Right. So that is if I am not specifying a group for that user. So this will default specify the group, right? Home directory, so it's given here, default home directory / home. Okay, the number of days after the password will expire until the account is permanently disabled. Inactive is -1. Yeah, I think those values are not given, right? So that is why -1 value is given. So default expire date is null. So by default, it won't expire, right? Scale variable specify directly containing skeletal user files. In other words, profile that is copied to a universal home directory when it is created. Right. This etc scale, right? It's kind of a default folder containing the default configuration and everything. This is the same as in Windows. We have folder called all users, which is hidden. which is in the users directory. So, when you create a new account in Windows, right? When you log in the first time, how does it create your profile? There are some default settings which apply to your account. How does that happen? Those are actually stored in the all users folder, right? If you It's hidden folder. If you mistakenly delete that folder, you will have a problem, right? Then when you create a new user, uh, the profile or user folder will not be created, or there will be nothing there, because it's taken from the all users folder, right? The default settings and everything. So it should not be deleted, right? Now here in Linux also same thing. The default profile and every the default settings is copied from this etc scale folder, right? So whatever you can change that folder if you want, right? You can maybe put a shortcut or things like that, so that when you create a new user, that user will be getting those whatever the files which are there in that default folder, right? So there is a way to modify these default folders, so that we can apply the same new settings to every new user, right? That is also possible, right? Yeah. Then there's a mail spool. Yeah, this is when creating emails. Okay, that's all. So these are the settings which are there in the user add configuration file. Then let's open the other one. Yeah, so I do need the admin account to go to that. Okay. Yeah. So I have to type more. Right. Yeah. So some values are here also, like the mail directory, default email directories, /var/mail. Yeah. Then fail log enabling, they have set to yes. So that is related to logging, right? Then log unknown fail enable is no. So unknown usernames may become world readable. Yeah, enable display of unknown usernames when login phases are recorded. Yeah, so there are certain values like this. Enable login of successful logins. Right. So it has put to be no. So if you make it yes, then in the log file, every successful login will also be recorded, right? So currently only failed logins, I think, are recorded. Yeah, failed log is enabled. So successful logins are not recorded in the log file, right? So if you want, we can enable that so that every successful login will be in the log file. Then we can see the log file and see who are the users who logged in, right? So there are some other um, default options which are there in this file. Okay, here are those values. Okay, so actually these values are there, right? I think you saw these values, right? This was there in the, I think, pass WD file. See, this pass maximum days is 99999 and pass one age is 7. Minimum days is 0. So these are the default values. These values were actually there in the past WD file, right? I didn't know that it was these values, right? So Um, yeah. So below you see the minimum and maximum values of the user ID. See the user ID minimum value is 1000 and maximum is 60,000. Yeah, for system accounts they have put 100 and 999. They have actually commented those lines, but yeah, so basically below 100 it's used for system accounts, right? This is for just for identification purposes, I think, from the operating system. Right, then group ID, GID, min max values are here, minimum 1000, maximum 60,000. So the next user ID will be 1001, group ID will be 1001. Okay, login retries it has give 5. So if you type 5 times in incorrect password, it will exit, right? Then you'll have to re-log in again. And then there's a login timeout given 60 seconds. So like when you have to type the username or password, if you wait for 60 seconds without typing anything, it will go again to the login prompt, right? You will have to type the username and password again. So yeah, and then here should login be allowed if we can't cd to the home directory? The default home they have put yes. I think that is when you type, yeah, that is, I think, when you type cd it goes to the home directory. I think that is the value. Yeah, then we have some other values. User groups enable, yes. So group is there. And encrypt method is mentioned here as SHA-512. That is the algorithm which will be used to encrypt the passwords, right? Yeah, so these are the algorithms which you see which are normally used to encrypt passwords. MD5, you might have heard MD5 algorithm. That's the most common use method for encrypting passwords, right? MD5 hash. And then you have SHA-256, then SHA-512. So 512 is a bit higher, right? The encryption. It's difficult to break, right? The number of bytes or bits used for this is higher. Then you have DES method as well. But anyway, here SHA-512 is used to encrypt. Yeah, so these these last few options are just commented. It says they are not used anymore. Right, anyway. So yeah, you see the default options which will be created when you are creating a new user, right? Right. You can also view this default list by entering user at -d. So if you put -d, it will show you this default values, right? So -c includes the user's full name. E specifies the date when the user account will be disabled. That is expiration date, right? If number of days after, no, sorry, specifies the date when the user account will be disabled. Yeah, so we can set a date to disable the account. -f is the number of days. Okay, number of days after password expiration before the account is disabled. Yeah, if you put -1, you disable it. Yeah, so I think earlier we saw that inactive as -1. So I think it refers to this value. So account will not be disabled after the password is expired. So this value is there so that, let's say password expires in, let's say, 10 days. If you put 7 here, then after 10 days password will expire. Then when the password expires, it will be there for like 7 days. Then after the 7th day, your account will be disabled if you don't change your password, right? That tell you, if you want, you can put, or if you put -1, it will disable this. -G you give to specify the group. Then -G is to specify additional groups, multiple groups, right? -M will make sure that user does not have a home directory. So minus simple M will specify the home directory. So you see, Linux is case sensitive. So minus and capital is different functions, as you can see here. See, -G is a default group, -G is additional group, right? So you have to be careful when you are using these options. Okay, so -N only in Red Hat and Fedora, right? -P can give the password there, right? -R will make sure that it's system user. -S you give the default shell, specify the default shell. -U you specify the UID manually. So this is example given. You said -C means full username. So here you give the full username, and at the end you give the username, right? So this is the full name. -M will make the home directory, right? Then -P is the password, like that. This, then the shell, then the username. So let's try that and see. User add. Yeah, -C, then you have to use double quotation if you have spaces, right? You have to be careful when you are using spaces, because if you don't put the double quotation, double quote, right? It will only take the value only up to your space, right? After that, it will not read whatever is there. So you have to use the double quotation to make sure the spaces are also read by the command. So -M to create the home directory, then -P the password. They have put double quotation, but I don't think you need. Right, then what? Sorry. Then you give the username finally. So this is because a normal user cannot create account, right? We need admin permission. Right. Now shall we see right now can you see the last line? So 1001 is the user ID and yeah, I have not specified a group, so I think it has used the same name for the group also, right? And it's 1001, then the full name, then home folder, then the shell, right? So let's check the shadow file. Right. So the password is not encrypted. Okay, I think maybe option is there to do that as well. So since I just gave the password in the command, it's not encrypted. Okay, we'll see that. Okay, anyway, so yeah, you see these values here, 999. That's those default values that we saw earlier, right? Warning, the password warn time is 7. It's the values here. 999 is, I think, the expiration value of the password or something, right? Okay, so yeah, let's see the group. Right, now you see the bottom, because I did not give a group, it created a group with the same username and the ID is 1001, right? So because those default things are there in those files configuration, right? It's said to create a group with the same name if you are not specifying a group for the user, right? Now let me so to log out, I just type exit, right? Now I'm trying to log in using that new username. So CAT123. Okay. Yeah, so I think when creating, there must be an issue there. Let's change the password and see. Okay, so we'll go to the next step. Now we created the account. Right, so you use this passwd command to change the password, right? You could enter password at the share prompt. Right, let's type this command. So I have to type sudo, right? Because it's not my account. Yeah, so it shows the details of that account. If I use this minus S to change the password, just type passwd and the username. Right. So let's pass, okay, sudo d summer. Right, so it's asking for the new password. I will put the same thing, CAT123. Yeah, pass, yeah, so I have to type the same 2 times. I think I made a mistake. Right, success. Now let's see the file. Now the encryption is there, right? So I think when I created, somehow the password has not properly written to this file. Let's log in and see now. Someone CAT123. Right. Now I'm in. Now check this. Sudo. So I should not be able to. Let's try to open a file. Right. See, since someone is not a sudo user, now I cannot use the sudo command to do run admin commands. So now can you see what happens? It does not actually give an error at the beginning. It will ask for the password. Then when I type the password, it says I am not in the sudo's file, and then this incident will be reported. So actually, this will be logged in a log file where administrators will know. Okay, this person tried to run an admin command, right? So there are some other options as well. Here minus L will lock the user's account. So in the passwd command, right? So then the user cannot log in. Minus U will unlock. Minus D removes user password. Then N sets the minimum number of days for the password to be changed. Then X the maximum number of days. Right. W is the warning, right? How many days before to warn, before the password expiring. I is the number of days to wait after the password expiry to disable the account. Right. So let's say a user does something mischievous, right? And then we want to block his account or lock his account. Someone, right? Right. Now if we check the shadow file. Okay, can you see the summon? That line, can you see in front now there's a exclamation mark, right? So yeah, when you lock a account or disable account, this is what it does to the file. Now if I try to, okay, before doing that, yeah, now can you see? So someone, there's L there. So L means it's locked. If I try to log in, I will not be able to, right? Um, okay, so it doesn't give any indication that is locked. It says that login is incorrect. Actually, that will make your password to a non-working state, right? So your password won't work when you lock. In Windows, of course, when you lock an account, you try to log in, you get a message saying your account is locked and to contact the administrator, right? Now, to unlock the account, you type -u wd minus. Okay, what is happening? Password -u sama. Right. Now let's see. Right. Now that exclamation is not there, right? Okay. Now, yeah. Let's see the. Yeah, it has a P. It was there earlier, so password is there. So now can. Okay. So yeah, we will stop for today. Then we have some other commands that for changing user and so on. Right. So any questions from what I did so far? So you have to try this out, right? Try that previous one I gave the previous day. I shared with you the slides, right? So there are some few more commands that we have to try in this also. Then you can try all the other commands. So that password, I'm not sure whether it's a problem with this command or because I didn't use the inverted commas here. But usually you use inverted commas if you have a space, right? Okay, and I think you can't have space in a password, I think, right? So you're typing a password, don't use spaces. I don't think it's, spaces are allowed in a password. Right. Any questions we need to ask from what I did so far?
No, sir. We will practice this and meet next week.
Right. Okay, then we will stop for today.
Okay, sir.
Right. Yeah. So when you are doing, practicing and all that, if you, get any questions, you can just write it down and then ask during the lecture, right?
Okay, sir.
Okay, then thank you very much for joining
Thank,
the lecture and have a great week. Yeah,
thank you.
and yeah, then now we are actually having a holiday, right? We can't go anywhere and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so get whatever you need today because after today you will not be able to go out and everything. And yeah, have a great week and stay safe.